Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown. This time for UFC 303, happy International Fight Week. It is going to be a banger. We have ourselves 13 fights on tap and some very, very good ones. I'm happy to dive into them. Of course, we are in Vegas. It is one that is going to be a highly touted one, let's say, put it that way. It was one that had a lot of aura. I mean, we had our boy Conor McGregor supposed to be on the card. He's not anymore. It's still a very, very good one. Alex Pereira stepping on a short notice, we'll take that. But a lot of very entertaining matchups, a lot of closely aligned fights, especially on the main card. Some interesting DraftKings and betting opportunities, to say the least. Now, I don't want to waste too much time talking guys' ears off. I'll do that anyways. I'll make sure this video is timestamped down below so you're able to fast forward to see which fights you guys want to talk about. But with that out of the way, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, check out Established Run, check out Cool Bet. You guys know that whole deal, and let's do this. Get the fight night started with the 20-5 Ricky Simón versus the 20-3 Vinicius Oliveira in a fight that should not be opening the card. This is a very, very fun matchup between a fighter who has been at the top of the division for a while versus a guy with the knockout of the year contender. A phenomenal matchup here that should definitely start the card off with a bang. Ricky Simón's been in the UFC for a while, 13 fights, and what really stands out about him is that grappling tendencies. 5.49 takedowns landed per 50 minutes. He pushes a hellacious pace. He's a guy who's just continually going forward, and with a win over Merab Dvalishvili on his record, he's definitely someone to look out for when it comes to cardio, pace, and pressure. Now, he's certainly not the best striker. He's someone who we have seen knock out twice before, someone who can lose those exchanges, but with how much he's pushing that wrestling pace and how competent he is on the feet, it never really plays out too much. He's a guy who is typically going to go out there, overwhelm you with pace, overwhelm you with pressure, land a ton of takedowns, look for scramble for top position, and on the feet be able to contend, but mostly just to set up those shots. His opponent, Vinicius Oliveira, is kind of the opposite of him. A guy who's only had one fight in the UFC, a fight where he took on a short notice opponent, got dominated pretty much early on, and then landed this incredible flying knee, one of the most beautiful knockouts you see. It was wild, and it really put his name on the map. But that fight kind of summed him up because he's a guy who I think has his flaws. We saw him, be taken down plenty of times, give up mount, be hit in the feet as well, be a bit erratic. But when it came down to it, he dug deep. He has good cardio. He has incredible power that'll translate, and he can end the fight at any point in time. I think when it comes down to skill and who wins this fight, it goes to decision, all the time it's Ricky Simón. I think he's the more proven fighter. I love his wrestling, especially against Vinicius Oliveira, who can be taken down, who can give up positions. I think Ricky Simón can have a field day, and I think he should win this fight at a high clip. But am I playing Simón at his price tag? Probably not, although I think he should cover it. He's a guy who I have seen knocked out before, and the knockout power of Vinicius Oliveira is certainly on display, especially considering how he carries it late, especially considering how every round starts on the feet. It is one that I wouldn't be surprised if Oliveira went out there and got that. However, with that being said, this is a fight I do see being a violent affair, whether it be with Simón getting top position, utilizing some BJJ, and finishing Oliveira on the mat, or that power of Oliveira coming to fruition on the feet. I do think a finish can materialize, and in saying so, this should be a phenomenal fight. I'm going to pick Ricky Simón here. I mean, Oliveira only has a 40% takedown defense. That's not going to bode too well against a guy of the caliber of Ricky Simón, and I do think he's able to get it done quite quickly. But on DraftKings, it's a fight I want from both sides. 8.9K for Ricky Simón. We have seen him go out there and put up phenomenal scores. 111 against Shore, 106 against Sunset, 131 against Pereira, 106 against Borg. He's a guy who has a ton of wrestling upside, has control time upside, I think has finish upside in this matchup, and has an opponent in front of him who can be taken down very easily. Flip side of things, though, Oliveira is a solid punt play because when we've seen Simón lose, it's often by knockout. I mean, we saw Uriah Faber do it. We saw Song Yadong do it late, but he was able to score 100 points in a fight where he was dominated early just because he has knockdown potential, he has finish upside, and I do think a win condition for Oliveira is largely predicated on that finish. So, although I don't think it's too high of an outcome, 7.3 cal, sprinkle in some ownership because he does have solid power. However, I think more times than not, Ricky Simón's able to get it done. 8.9K, I think he's a guy I'll be getting into my lineups very often because he's got wrestling upside, an opponent who's willing to be taken down, and some sneaky finish upside. Give me Ricky Simón in what is a phenomenal fight to get the card started. Next up, 9-1 Raid Cesura versus the 9-3 Carlos Hernandez. Undefeated fighter here in Cesura coming in as a very big favorite, and I think this is going to be a fun one too. 22 years old, off the road to the UFC. This guy is a phenomenal wrestler. I can't really talk to his striking too much because we only see him go out there, shoot takedowns, land them at will, and then show a beautiful transition game on the mat with BJJ and some solid ground and pound as well. He is a phenom on the mat. 22 years old, like I mentioned, this guy can be a problem. Small sample size, but 6.84 takedowns landed per 15 minutes, pushing a hellacious pace and dominating his opponents in the process. Now, I still want to see him get extended. I want to see him face some adversity, but from what I've seen from the small sample side, he is warranted of a big price tag because I do think he could go place in the UFC. Carlos Hernandez is more of that journeyman. I don't think he's going to be a champion time soon. He doesn't have the best wrestling. He doesn't have the best overall power or striking, but he's able to compete in all areas. Solid volume on the feet, solid technicality, very good scramble. Shall get there to the mat as well, but just doesn't have the most finishing aspect or oomph beside of it, and doesn't really excel at any area of MMA. With that also being said, 65% takedown defense. He's been taken down. He's been submitted before, and I do think that that's not a really good recipe when you're facing a guy like Tsuruya here, who is so violent on the mat, who is able to go out there and snatch things up really quickly. Early on, Tsuruya is going to be able to have his way with Hernandez, and that is a very dangerous threat. Now, how will this fight look if it's the third round and Tsuruya is forced to strike? We don't know, but until I see that for certain, I'm going to have to pick Tsuruya here. He's my pick to get it done on DraftKings. He's one of my favorite options up top. We're going to talk about the elephant room in Talbott later at 9.8K, but right now, Tsuruya at 9.3 is a very solid option too. Wrestling upside early, and a ton of finish upside early on. And when it comes down to comparing him to the floors of someone like Buday or Pyfer, he's got a very, very high floor this week at $500 cheaper than the next closest guy to him. I think Tsuruya's going to attract a lot of ownership. I'll have a lot of ownership of him as well because of his ability to get takedowns, get finish by opportunities, and I do love him at 9.3K. If you think that Road to UFC is a fraud, then go ahead and pick Hernandez, but doesn't have much wrestling upside. His path to victory is predicated on a late finish, and although it probably would be close to optimal at his salary, I just don't think it happens too often. I think more times than not, he gets dominated here for that reason. Don't want much of a 6.9K. Tsuruya or bust. I think gets it done. I think he could be the real deal here. Excited to see what he can do. We have the 13-2 Martin Buday versus the 34-23 Andre Arlovski. At 45 years old, we got Arlovski back in the cage. And see, it hasn't been too pretty for him recently. You know, lost his last 3 fights in a row, and he's a bigger underdog here again. And it's so tough to say because technicality-wise, I mean, he's still a very solid striker. I think he has the ability to go out there and compete and potentially win close decisions. Shall his opponents stay there, but I've seen him crumble. I've seen him taken down and tap immediately after. He doesn't seem like he has the most resiliency in the cage right now. His durability is also in question, being knocked out by Dontel Mays the way he did. He's a guy who, although has all the tools, is not someone you want to trust at his age. Is not someone who you can trust to go out there and be an active finisher either. He needs to pitter-patter on the outside of 15 minutes, and at the heavyweight division, it's hard to trust. I don't think Martin Buday is necessarily a minus 300 favorite against most people. I think he's got a lot of flaws in his game. But what he is he's a big boy. He's got a ton of volume. He's got solid ground and pound shot to get there, and he's able to use his physicality well. Until his loss to Gatsiev, won his first 4 fights before that, and he's shown that he can compete in a lot of these areas, and he can be a solid, fringe top 15 guy here in the UFC because he got decent cardio, can put together volume, got solid durability as well, and shall get to the ground, solid ground and pound, decent ability to lock up submissions if you are named Josh Parisian as well. But what it's coming down to here is I don't really want to play Buday at this price tag. I think he can be hit very easily, and Arlovski may be the better moment winner for that reason. And although I'm not picking Arlovski to win, Buday's just not a guy I want to trust long term. He's not a guy who I want to go out there and lay a minus 200 price tag on against a guy who's got the technical ability of Andre Arlovski. So although I'm picking Martin Buday, it's not with the intention of betting him. I think that Buday is a tough fight to break down this week because although I think he's a tough guy to play at minus 300 or a 9.1K on DraftKings, against a guy in Andre Arlovski, he in theory has finish upside because we have seen Arlovski melted so easily. So at 9.1K, Buday is that pivot play. I like Simone, I like Tsuruya, I even like Pyfer more than him, but at 9.1K, he's going to be the lowest owned of the bunch. He has finish upside. When he got his one first-round finish win, he scored 119 points. I think that in a perfect landslide, he's able to get the optimal lineup, but he's purely a pivot play. I prefer the other guys around him. Arlovski at his price tag, I could see a reason why, but he's more of a decision machine, and at this point in time, I don't think he makes the optimal lineup either. So if I don't really want to get too much invested in, I think Buday gets it done. I think he's at a better point in his career, and shall he get an early finish, he could be optimal, but he's going to remain a pivot play until I can see him go out there and beat a solid level of competition. And the first of 3 Canadians on this card, 13-8 Jillian Robertson versus the 18-12 Michelle Waterson Gomez. A pretty fun fight buried here between 2 females who have been atop their division. Simply put, this could be classified as a striker versus grappler matchup. Waterson Gomez is going to be the karate hottie. She's able to land good kicks, good volume. She has a solid durability and well-rounded skill set. I think she can compete in a lot of the areas on the feet, and she's the better pure kickboxer than Jillian Robertson. But Jillian Robertson has always been that submission or bust girl. Phenomenal jiu-jitsu. Her wrestling kind of improving as well, but she's someone who, once she gets to the ground, she's someone who is very dangerous. She has a very good submission game, and you love to see her when she's facing non-grapplers. I don't really want to consider Michelle Waterson Gomez a non-grappler because she's fought at the top of the division, but shall I get to the mat, I really do favor Robertson, and I do think she has some very good submission upside of this matchup here. However, with that being said, on the feet, Waterson Gomez is a way better kickboxer. I think can win minutes, and shall she keep this upright, I think she's someone who is very dangerous to win minutes and potentially win optics with her striking here. For that reason, I don't know how much I want to play Jillian Robertson at minus 170 here on the money line. When it comes to picking her, I typically go towards my grapplers, and I will pick Jillian Robertson being the more physically imposing fighter and have a better ground game here. but maybe not with the most confidence. At 8.7K on DraftKings, Robertson is someone who I am picking to win and who has plenty of 100-plus point wins on DraftKings. But on such a loaded card, she is fitting into a mid-range that is really tough to get me in and play her. I think she has submission upside. I think she's a great GPP play. Shall you get to her on DraftKings? But I think she's kind of limited to that. I'm not forcing her into my single entries. I'm not forcing her into a lot of these lineups. I think that the way I'm playing her is if I want to take a stand on her with a large portfolio, hoping she outscores a Bueno, Silva, Fili, and Lopes around her. I think that's a stand you can take, and it'll be a viable one. Shall you have the portfolio for it? But she's a very risky option considering she has a lesser chance to win the people around her. Gomez at 7.5K, I think it's a solid cash play. I think she's able to potentially draw it out to decision, but not the best scorer. Has only scored above 80 points once, and that was against Hill back in a 5-rounder. I don't think she's necessarily someone who's going to go out there and win 3 rounds on a high clip. She's 1-6 in her last 7. She's more of a decision machine. And although she can do so, I think that there are some underdogs that are live this week, and I'd much rather play them. So give me Jalen Robertson. I think she gets it done by submission. I do think it's a dicey spot, though, and I'm not really into playing her around -200, but I do think she gets it done, and I do think she's a viable play in that mid-range. Then here he is, the 8-0 Peyton Talbott versus the 12-2 Giannis Ghemmouri. Peyton Talbott is trending to be the largest favorite in UFC history. -2,000 at the time of filming. You can get plus 1,000 or better on Ghemmouri here. And you know what? I'd love to go out here and tell you Ghemmouri is live or is able to do all this stuff, but this seems like a clear setup matchup for a big prospect to go out there and add another win to his resume. Talbot has made a phenomenal impression so far in the UFC. Amazing striking, great range, great cardio, great ability to build as the fight goes, want to get good reads. And he put an absolute beating on a guy in Cameron Saman who was very highly touted here. And I think what they're doing here is they're getting him on a big pay-per-view to promote the guy because he's a likable guy. You know, he's hip. He's able to go out there and have a good Twitter rep to the younger kids and all that kind of stuff too. But no, he's a guy who I think has a good ability to go out there and make a name for himself and turn into the big star that he can be because he's looked great so far in the UFC. I think he's going to be a way cleaner striker in this matchup. I think he has a grappling path to victory. Shall it go there? And I just saw Giannis Ghemmouri finish to the body. I think Peyton Talbot is going to just toy with him. He has the ability to go out there and break on multiple occasions. The fear I have with Talbot is him living up to his price tag on DraftKings. I'm not going to be playing Talbot -2,000, so how can I target him on DraftKings? The problem I have here is 9.8K, tied for the highest salary of all time. He scored well last time against Simon, scoring 113, but he has never gotten a first-round finish before. He is purely round 2 or 3 as the fight goes on. And on a slate like this, when you have Pyfer, Tsuruya, Simone's, it's dangerous. If you want the cash play, if you want the floor, I mean, he's the safest play. -2,000, he's going to win. He's going to probably score around at least 80 points. But you need an early finish from the live off his salary. You need knockdowns. You need a first-round finish. If this gets to round 2 and he scores 105 points, 110 points, he's probably not optimal at 9.8K. So this really complex puzzle we have here. I will still have some of him at 9.8K because he does have such a clear path to victory, just a clear matchup. But I do not fault anybody for being underweight here. I think Tsuruya has just as much upside, especially with more grappling upside. I think Pyfer has just as much upside as well. I think he is a safe play and one that if I do my reads and think that he is someone that is going to be lower owned, I'll play him. But I'm definitely not forcing my lineups at 9.8K. I think there are worlds where he doesn't make the optimal, and for that reason, maybe I'll play into some upside other ways. But give me Talbot to win. No hot take there. He should get it done. I'm saying around 2 KO, but Charlotte coming around 1. He's definitely someone to keep an eye on DraftKings. Moving on up, we got the 15-7 Charles Jourdain versus the 12-2 Jean Silva. Super fun fight. Fighting nerds guys here in Jean Silva, a guy who I like. I think he's a very solid fighter. I've bet on him before. A guy who I think brings an interesting style. He's not the best minute winner in the world, but he's got a lot of power, very good durability, ability to make reads as the fight goes on, and grapple, especially on the mat here, shall he decide to do so. Fights out of a good camp, and I do like the style he brings. Charles Jourdain is one of my favorite fighters. Great volume, always putting on a war, good durability, and a fighter who wants to go out there and put on a show. He had some solid wins in the UFC, but he's definitely up and down, hit or miss. And seeing him fight live in Canada showed that last time, losing to Sean Woodson the way he did. He's certainly not the most trustworthy fighter, but what I think here is we're getting a bit of an overcorrection. Jean Silva was an underdog on Dana White Contender Series. He was plus 175. He was potentially losing early as well. He was a guy who wasn't as highly touted because he doesn't win minutes all too often. Although he's a very solid finisher with good power and solid ground game, he doesn't actively shoot takedowns. He doesn't have the most volume. He doesn't have the most minute-winning ability. And he's someone who can be hit at a very high clip. So how does an upset on Dana White Contender Series against Kevin Vallejos and a win over Weston Wilson make you the favorite currently, even -110 here against Charles Jourdain in this matchup? I'm a bit confused by that. Of course, the look on Jourdain isn't great last time. He was outclassed in the feet there, but a completely different matchup here. He's now going to be the bigger fighter here against Jean Silva, the guy who I can believe to be more active, a guy who can scramble very well in his own right, who has some submission wins, but a guy who I just think has more activity. more ability to win over the judges, better ability to go out there and land combinations that are going to extend this fight and score it for him. And I think he's just a guy who I think has fought the way better level of competition. Although John Silva is a good camp, I haven't seen from anything that deserves to make him to be the favorite in this matchup. I haven't seen him go out there and, fight a perfect 15 minutes, throw the amount of volume I'd like him to see. He's got one shot knockout power. He's got a solid ground game shot go there, but he doesn't actively pursue it. And for that reason, I like Charles Jourdain here. I think he's got the ability to win the judges' scorecards. I think he has way better volume, and he's just fought the better level of competition. I will be betting him if this line stays even. Maybe I'll try to get plus money, but seriously, a guy I'll be playing. DraftKings-wise, though, not so much. I love Jourdain, always has, but really only scored over 100 points once, and that was back in 21 against Rojo. John Silva's been tough. I don't see him finishing here. So in a decision, it's a tough place to back him. Scored 93 against Gracie in a decision, 92, 91. And of course, that can be close to optimal at 8.3K, but he doesn't have the same upside as a Garry or a Dolidze or a Lopes. He's a guy who I prefer in cash. I'll be playing him at cash 8.3K. And he's not necessarily someone who I want to force into my lineups, considering he doesn't have that same GPP upside. So give me Jourdain. Silva, I think, is very similar. Solid box score, but I prefer more underdogs. I prefer going cheaper and getting up to the higher end range guys this week. So in a fight at project to go the distance, with Jourdain having more volume, I just think that these salaries are tougher to get to. Give me Jourdain, but let's move on. Then we got the 23-11 Andre Fili versus the 29-13 Cub Swanson. Phenomenal fight here. We have the younger fighter here in Andre Fili, who's going to be the longer ranger guy, versus the absolute legend in Cub Swanson, and what looks to be a very solid striking affair. If that's the case, maybe this line is wise. I mean, Cub Swanson is one of the best in the world, always has been. A very good guy at getting into brawls, putting on Hall of Fame worthy performances. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. A guy who is just a brawler and a very fun to watch, and I think that this fight is going to be no less. When it comes down to it, I think the better kickboxer is going to be Andre Fili. He has more weapons, more range, and I think he's able to utilize his youth to his advantage here. But pure boxing, I think, might be Cub Swanson. And when it comes to durability, especially from taking shots, that might be Cub Swanson as well. And I think that with it being a 15-minute kickboxing affair, it's tough to make Andre Fili this big of a favorite. With that being said, though, there's more than just kickboxing for Fili here. I think he has potential grappling path to victory against a guy in Cub Swanson who can be taken down. And I think that when it comes to the durability of the body of Swanson, Fili is someone who is able to work that as well. And when he's on his game, Fili can be very, very dangerous. So am I playing Fili at this price tag? Definitely not. He can be knocked out. He can be pieced up in boxing range. If he doesn't fight to the best of his abilities, this fight could be very, very close. But I'm definitely picking him to win. He has way more paths to do so. Shall he decide to go down that road? Get the better youth, the better grappling ability. He is someone who I do think should win this fight, with many of his anthropomorphic advantages as well. A guy I do like here, and an interesting fight to see how it goes down. DraftKings-wise, though, another fade. 8.6K for Fili is interesting. I mean, he typically isn't the best DraftKings scorer. He has scored 110 against Almeida, but I don't see that as being too high of a possibility. He's a guy who I think could have grappling success, but is mostly predicated towards longer-term striking from range, utilizing that range. And he scored 67 against Aljo doing that, 77 against Jourdain doing that. And I think that he's someone who doesn't have that same upside of the people around him. So for me at 8.6K, I'm not getting to Fili that option. I actually prefer other people in this mid-range way more, including the likes of Julian Robertson, who we've already talked about. Flip side of things, I think Swanson's a live underdog. I think he has a better chance to win the line and tails. I think he has a good chance to land knockout success. I mean, we saw Fili knocked out multiple times before, and Cub Swanson does still throw heavy. I think he's a very live underdog at 7.6K. He isn't my favorite, but he's certainly somebody I will be sprinkling in due to his upside and due to the fact that I think this could be a very close fight. Shall it remain on the feet, and shall Fili not fight to the best of his advantages. So give me Fili to win. I think he gets it done. I'm going to say by decision, but there are definitely cases to be made for both sides. And the prelim headliner, the 12-3 Joe Pyfer versus the 16-7 Marc-Andre Barriault. I love Barriault. Fights like a hockey player, power bar, ton of stamina, ton of ability to go out there and fight dirty. And when it first came down to watching this fight, I'm like, perfect, all right? Marc-Andre Barriault is going to go out there and he's going to break Joe Pyfer. He's got way better cardio. He's got good volume, and I think he can go out there and do that. And I was ready to pay the big plus money play on Barriault, but I think we've got to remember who Body Bags is here. A guy who has won me plenty of money. My biggest bet of all time was on Body Bags Pyfer here, and for a reason. He's the guy the UFC wants to see succeed. He's a guy who is pretty well-rounded, but has mostly been a can crusher. He's definitely not facing Crane Crusher against Barriault, but what he is facing is a guy who, although poses his biggest threat, is also a guy who has a ton of advantages over. Barriault is a pure boxer from close range. Solid durability, amazing cardio, but he can be hit, he can be taken down, and we've seen him finish in his own right by power strikers like Chidi and Jaquani. So when it comes down to breaking down this fight, if this fight's in the third round, Barriault's live and he should be winning that third round. But that's only really if Pyfer death gasses. When it comes to having the power edge, it's Pyfer. And what I really like here, though, is the grappling advantage. People are forgetting that Pyfer's a phenomenal wrestler. His ability to go out there and take down Barriault. Guy's been taken down plenty of times before and submitted on the mat. I just think that Pyfer has more paths. I think he wants to get back to his winning ways. I think he wants to go back to being a star in the UFC, a guy who had a main event before. I think he has an opponent in front of him, although a tough stylistic matchup. Shall I get to the third round? Before that, Pyfer has a ton of finishing upside, and he is someone who I do think is able to get that finish as much as I love Marc-Andre Barriault. DraftKings-wise, though, great play. I think that a lot of people are going to go towards the Simon Tsuruya Talbott. Hopefully, Pyfer goes unnoticed because he has a lot of KO power. He's got a lot of grappling upside, and we have seen him put up great scores before. 105 against Ghemmouri, 97 against Razak Al-Hassan. I think he has a ton of upside, and in a slate that is loaded in this top range, I love his UP upside. I love his ability to go out there and finish early. Flip side of things, Barriault is also an interesting play because of his volume, because of his activity. He can put up very good scores. 120 against Marquez in a late finish there. 132 against Azatar in a late finish there as well. If he is beating Joe Pyfer late, it's going to score very well, and he's a very live underdog at 7.2K. However, the grappling upside is there, and for that reason, I'm going to be picking Pyfer. I will be playing him on DraftKings. Very fun fight, but I do like the Pyfer option up top. Whether it be with early KO power or grappling upside, I think he has multiple ways of getting it done, and I'm picking him to do so this weekend. On the main card, we have the 14-0 Ian Machado Garry versus 22-2 Michael Page. Great fight. I love that it's opening the main card. It just shows how stacked this card is. And it's an interesting one. Michael Page proved me wrong last time. He beat the brakes off of Holland, cost me some money, and he put on a really good performance. He still remains the same fighter, though. He's very one-dimensional. He has great in-and-out striking. He has solid ability to go out there and beat weaker technical defensive strikers, but he's not the best minute winner against people who throw more volume. He still has a huge grappling deficiency, and his chin is still something to be tested. Ian Garry's undefeated here, and I wouldn't call him a world beater, but he has a lot more paths than I think Michael Page might have here. I think, of course, there's a world where Page is able to go out there and land the one-shot power blow against a guy in Garry who has been knocked out before, that's a lie, who has been knocked down many times before. But aside from that, I think Garry's going to win more minutes on the feet. I think Garry has way more grappling upside. And although Garry, like I mentioned, has been dropped, Page isn't perfect in his own right either. So I think it's going to be a great stylistic matchup. I think we're going to see the classic Venom stance, but Ian Garry's going to push him. He's going to go out there and potentially take him down. And I'm going to pick the guy with more paths to victory here. Garry has shown to continue to make improvements. He fights out of a solid camp with a solid game plan, and I do think takedowns should be in that game plan this week. So I'm going to pick him. I didn't expect myself to. I think Page might burn me again here, the complete possibility, but I think Garry has more paths. For that reason, I am choosing him. DraftKings-wise, Garry's a very interesting option. 8.2K, he's a huge salary relief this week. He has never been below 8.8K and has only been below 9K once in his UFC career. Typically at the top of the price range and typically puts up some pretty okay scores. Scored 109 a couple times. He only scored 60 points his last win here, and I do think that there is a very good opportunity he busts here against a guy with the style of Michael Page. However, with grappling upside and potentially box scores leading people away from him, I think Garry at 8.2K could be very sneaky. I think he's a great ability to go out there and land takedowns. I think he could get finish upside. I do think that he's got in a spot here that could score better than his last matchup. He's a very interesting pivot play for me in this mid-range, and I will certainly be looking to play him if the field is underweight on him. I think by that logic, Page is also a solid play. Only scored 52 in a win last time, and that's definitely not great, but I don't see him winning this fight too often if it's not potentially clipping Garry or going out and they're doing that. So I'm fading Page, but I will have some ownership of him due to that knockout upside. This fight as a whole is a solid pivot play in the mid-range, one where I am picking Garry because he has more paths, but it should be a very entertaining one. Next up, 10-3-1 Bueno Silva versus the 9-3 Macy Chiasson. This line has been crazy all week. Bueno Silva opened up a big favorite. Macy Chiasson has now flipped that line. Macy Chiasson is now the favorite. And you know what? I get betting Chiasson as an underdog. 5 inches of reach, 5 inches of height, solid volume striker, potentially better minute winner here, but I don't think she's the better fighter. I genuinely do not think so. Bueno Silva looked horrible last time, and I completely admit it, but this is a huge buy low spot here at MBS. She has got phenomenal jiu-jitsu, she's got way more power, and I think she's got way more durability and resiliency than a girl like Macy Chiasson, who yes has looked good recently, but who has not fought anybody as dangerous as MBS. With her wins coming against Kianzan, Dumont, Renault, and Young recently, I mean, holy, that is a very different step. Those are very different victories to compare to Bueno Silva here. When she has fought anybody with much finish upside, like an Aldana or like a Pennington, she was finished in both those matchups, and I think that Bueno Silva has the opportunity to go out here and finish her again. Yes, I do think Chiasson has a chance to win a decision here utilizing that range, but minus 120 for her to do that, more than a 50% indication, I completely disagree. I think Bueno Silva has way more moment winning upside. I think she could break her on Chiasson, who can be finished, who is soft to the body, who can be choked out. And I do think Bueno Silva has a solid inside the distance line that I may be even playing this week. Because of that, it's a very interesting matchup. I'm buying low on Bueno Silva. I might bet her. I will bet her at this price tag. How does that translate to DraftKings? Because I'm betting her at an underdog price tag, but she is 8.8K on DraftKings. That is disgusting. Not something I definitely want, but I will say she turns into the pivot play of the mid-range. No one's going to want to play her at her price tag, especially because she is being so undervalued by the market that she is someone who can go out there and live with her upside. Scored 109 against Landsberg in that matchup there, and if she goes out there and finishes, she has something like I think she potentially can, at 8.8K, she's going to be one of the lowest owned fighters on the entire slate because she is way too expensive. So you're playing a lot of risk, and for that reason, she is a solid GPP play. She has a lot of upside there, but you're mainly utilizing her to get some leverage on the field. Shall you go the chalkier options of like a Tsuruya or a Simone there? I think that she is one way to get different. 8.8K, hard to prioritize her over these phenomenal scores here, but an interesting play if you're trying to be unique. Flip side, I think Chiasson is a smash cash play. 7.4K, and she's favorite to win. That's a play you're going to want to play in cash. GBP, I get it too. If you think she can go out there and out volume or out control someone like Bueno Silva, she has line value. She has a ton of line value, but I'm not going to get there to her. I think she gets finished. So for that reason, at 7.4K, I'm not having too much of her. I think in GBP, there's better underdogs. I'd rather play in the upside of a Swanson or an Oliveira by knockout. And if that's the case, I just can't get to her much in GPP. I get the line value, but I'm picking against her. We'll see if Chiasson burns me. Actually, we'll see if Bueno Silva burns me again, but I do think she has all the tools to get it done. I'm buying low, and I do think she wins here. Next up, 37-19, Anthony Smith versus the 12-3 Roman Dolidze. Short notice fight and a very fun one. Both these guys are 35 years old, but it feels like Anthony Smith is so much older. He has been at the top of the division. He has fought the best of the best. He is someone who has been a perennial 205 contender, potentially even beating a guy like John Jones there, but a guy who has shown his wear and tear recently, has been knocked out pretty bad, has been taken down, controlled, shall he face grapplers, and he's a guy who I do think has an interesting personality breakdown. He was a massive underdog last time to Victor Petrino, and we did some solid work on established run, picking him to win and winning us some money on DraftKings, but came through with a solid guillotine performance, but that showed just the immaturity of Petrino, sitting down in that guillotine like that, giving that neck. That was more so a mishap. Oh, sorry, it was great on Smith for capitalizing for it, but I think him being this closely lined against Roman Dolidze there is a bit unfair. I've always been super hard on Dolidze, extremely. I'm not the biggest fan of the guy. I don't think he's the best minute winner, but he's extremely dangerous. And going up against a guy in Smith who has been so fragile recently, although he's got the heart of a lion out here, like a guy in Smith who, when he's taken down, is being dominated, who has been knocked out, and who has not been faring well against the most dangerous fighters. Face someone as dangerous, Dolidze is not a good idea. Yes, I know Dolidze is going up in weight here, but he's still a guy who I think has the ability to fill out the frame here. He's also shown us like Anthony Smith. And when it comes down to knockout power or ability to land ground and time or pop position, I think Dolidze has way more paths. And of course, I'm going to say it again, there's a world where Smith can pitter-pat from the outside and win this fight. I just don't think it's that often. And I do think Dolidze more times than not gets that finish. I think he's able to go out there, get takedowns, establish top position, land a lot of damage on him, stopping this fight. And because of that, he's going to pick to win and a phenomenal play on DraftKings. I love Dolidze this week. 8.4K. Maybe he won't be too popular. He doesn't always have the best box scores, but he's got an opponent in front of him who I think he can finish. I love Anthony Smith. I've always been high on him, but I've always been high on him as a big underdog. At 8.4K, Dolidze has the opportunity to go out there, take him down, and knock him out early, utilizing some submission upside, some knockout upside. I think a finish is likely for Dolidze, and for that reason, 8.4K. I think it's more upside than a Jourdain, a Fili, a Garry. I do like him in this mid-range. Of course, you have to play him over a Lopes Pereira. We'll talk about those shortly, but a solid play. Maybe it's the chest hair that's tempting me to play him, but I do like him to get it done here. Flip side of things, Smith, not getting too often. I don't think he finishes Dolidze at all, and his decision wins. 73 against Span, not much wrestling upside, not getting to at all. Give me Dolidze in what should be an interesting short notice matchup to say the least. Co-main event time, and this might as well be the main event. This is the fight that everyone's been looking forward to. It's a great one. It's the 24-6 rising star Diego Lopes versus the veteran 16-3 Brian Ortega. T-City's back, second fight of the year, and this is a wild breakdown. I've historically been very low on Diego Lopes. Let me put it out there. Flame me all you want, I've lost money. Fair play. The guy doesn't rate as the best finish. The guy doesn't rate as the best minute winner, but he has been on an electric run. Incredible power, a phenomenal jiu-jitsu. The jiu-jitsu is out of this world. And the guy is just extremely dangerous to finish the fight at any time, and he's burned me because of it. Brian Ortega has been at the top for a while. Insane durability, just as good jiu-jitsu, solid volume on the feet as well. Perennial contender, and a guy who I also think has not really been getting the respect he deserves. He fights through adversity. He's got a very good ground game, and I do think he's able to go out there and put on some very good fights. Now, this fight to me is an interesting one because I've picked Yusuf over Lopes. I think I even picked Gavin Tucker over Lopes. I don't really know if I can do it one more time with Ortega. I think I ended up picking Ortega, and I still will here. But Lopes has looked so dangerous, and we have seen Ortega knocked out. We have seen him taken down because he's so happy to play off his back. But he's a guy who we've seen hurt. Let's put it that way. And Diego Lopes has looked like an absolute world beater. However, when it comes to it, Lopes is a guy who has been stuck in bottom position plenty of times before. Although he has a phenomenal guard game, he's got really good jiu-jitsu. Ortega is just as good in the ground. Ortega is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu player and has often been considered one of the best of this division for it. Although Lopes has that knockout power, Ortega has shown resiliency, and himself, Lopes is super hittable, very easily to take down, and a guy who just doesn't win minutes too often. It's Lopes going out there, getting the finish early, or typically being controlled, losing the fight. And for that reason, I think Ortega has some opportunities to go out there and do so. Do I see Ortega going out there and finishing Lopes? Maybe not, but Ortega's got volume, he's got durability, and he's got solid takedown entries and top position. I think if Lopes wants to fish for submissions off his back, Ortega can ride him towards a victory like Evloev did, and he'll get picked to win because of that. This is my closest fight of the week. I think it could be -110, -110. I think the finish only line for Lopes should be really high. I think the decision only line for Ortega should be really high. I think it's Lopes early, Ortega by decision late. Because of that, super fun fight. I probably see a lot of very good scrambles, but an interesting fight to play on DraftKings. Lopes has a ton of finish upside, scored 122, 105, and 90 in his 3 wins in the UFC, and because of that, can score very well, but I don't see him being the takedown initiator here. I think he needs a knockout or a finish early to go out there and live off his value, and he's still going to be something who's going to be very popular due to his box score and popularity, really. So for that reason, I'm going to be underweight to him here. I'm still going to be playing him for sure, but a guy who I'm not going to go 100% ownership on because I do think he has his flaws. Ortega is not a guy who I'm smashing into my lineups, but I'll have some of him. Takedown upside, control ton upside, much more proven, good experience, and a guy who I think throws more volume on the feet as well. At 7.8K, I think the line's a bit disrespectful for him. I will have some of him. And although Lopes could go out there and burn me one more time, I think this is a phenomenal fight and one where I will be taking Brian Ortega. I can't wait for that one. And in the main event, the 10-2 Alex Pereira, 34-1 Garry Prochazka. Now, we saw this fight happen before. We had a breakdown. We had a bet on Alex Pereira being the more technical kickboxer. It cashed. He was able to catch Garry Prochazka in that matchup and get a solid knockout. That being said, first of all, shout out to these two guys for saving the card, but running it back is always an interesting look. The rematches never really often go like the first one, and there's typically a lot of different avenues and reasons for that. Pereira has been the top of the world. I mean, he has an insane run, considering they just joined the UFC 3 years ago. All these championships, this whole resume. How do you not like the guy? Shama, great guy, but he's still a guy who I think we haven't really seen tested too much. We haven't seen him on the ground. We haven't seen him extended. He's a guy who has got his kickboxing matchups. And as much as I love the guy, he has gotten some really good matchups for that. Whereas Garry is nowhere near the same technicality as Pereira, where he is nowhere near the same kickboxer as him. He's a madman who typically has good durability and who will probably drag him in these deep waters. I completely went in there expecting to pick Alex Pereira. Cashed my ticket last time. Why not do it again at close to evens? But I am picking Garry Prochazka in this matchup. I went back and watched the fight, and Prochazka was just stunning him. He was just coming forward so quickly, so erratically that Pereira was struggling to get his reads. I think Prochazka was close in the distance, more landing closer. And although we just saw Garry knocked out last time, Pereira is also a guy who we've seen chin check before. I wouldn't be surprised if Garry was able to catch him early on. Aside from that too, I think he was breaking him. The closer the fight goes, the more the back foot Pereira was. I think Garry was putting pressure on, and we add in the fact that we haven't really seen the ground game of Pereira tested too often. Garry was shooting for takedowns, and I do think he's able to go out there and shoot for takedowns again. There are referees who let that fight go last time, who don't stop it. I'm not saying it's early stoppage, but who don't stop it as early. And maybe Garry could come back the same way he did against Reyes in that matchup and look to continue his matchup here. I think that more times than not, Garry's able to exact his revenge, maybe get a trilogy here. I think he's got good forward pressure, good wrestling upside, and just an ability to confuse such a technical guy in Pereira by being such a madman. I think it's going to be a great fight. I would not be surprised if Pereira catches him here, but I think that percentage is lower than 60%, which is what he's implied here. So I more so think Garry should have more opportunities of path to get done. Because of that, he's my pick to win. DraftKings-wise, phenomenal play. Prochazka has always been a great DraftKings play. So 103 last time against Rakic, 123 against Teixeira, in a fight where he's proven he can go 5 rounds with cardio. Whereas Pereira in his last matchup, scored 97, put up a solid score. I think if he wants to win this fight, he has to catch him again early. So 8.5K has some viability, but Prochazka, 7.7K, favorite underdog in the entire slate. I think he wins his fight more times than not. I think he puts up over 100 points more times than not. I think he exacts his revenge. I think he utilizes some grappling. I think he utilizes some forward pressure, and doing so scores very well on DraftKings. So that'll do it. Main event. What a fight. Give me Garry Prochazka and what should be a banger for the rematch here. That's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. And quickly running through my quick picks. Taking Garry Prochazka, Brian Ortega, Roman Dolidze, Bueno Silva, Ian Machado Garry, Joe Pyfer Andre Fili, Charles Jourdain, Peyton Talbott, Julian Robertson, Martin Buday, Ray Tsuruya, and Ricky Simon. DraftKings wise, favorite fights to target are the Simon Oliveira fight, the main event, and that Pyfer Barriault fight. If you want to classify it by range, I think Talbot, if you have the salary, of course, is a phenomenal option to get up there. Is a phenomenal option to go up there and get him, but he's going to have a perfect performance off his price tag. I love the upside of Tsuruya instead. I think both him and Simon have a ton of grappling upside that could be utilized, as well as a GBP play of Pyfer playing off very well. In the mid-range, I think that Bueno Silva is a solid GBP play as a pivot, but more so, I think it's the upside of Pereira, the upside of Lopes, and my favorite one of them all, the upside of Dolidze, who I think is going a bit overlooked this week. In the mid-range, I think that Garry could be a solid pivot play. I would love to go mix him in there, hoping he gets takedowns, but in those two fights in the middle, Jourdain, Silva, Garry, Page are a bit tougher to click on this week because they're lower upside. And as underdogs, I think Ortega has some upside. Prochazka is my favorite underdog in the entire slate. I think Chiasson has a ton of live value, and because of her and cash, she's able to go out there and play well, but on GBP styles, I prefer a Barriault or an Oliveira due to their higher ceilings. Reignmakers wise, Talbot, Tsuruya, Pyfer, Simon, Dolidze, and Prochazka are the ways I'm going. Simple as that, no other breakdowns. Betting wise, I will be playing Charles Jourdain. I will be playing Bueno Silva. I already played Yuri Prochazka. I'll potentially look into some violence for some, maybe the Simon Oliveira fight. I think there's a lot of fights that could be fun this week. Check me out on Twitter at GamblesGordo to see my full slate of bets, probably posted this Friday, as well as check out Establish the Run and Cool Bet. I appreciate them for supporting me throughout all these videos. So be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love. If you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. I will reply to them as soon as I can. I wish everyone all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors this weekend, and let's make some money, guys.